Now, having said that, having a reform system in the education sector is not going to lead to the outcomes that we want to see in education. And there, I'm not promoting McKinsey as a alum of McKinsey, but there's been a McKinsey study, which is a fairly recent one, which has done a study across a number of OECD countries, where it shows that even with reform in education, it does not necessarily lead to better outcomes in education. And so I want us to caution ourselves that we need to look in all of this, setting up fancy institutions and agencies and improving teacher pay and having performance evaluation. We need to make sure we look at what the value drivers are in education that will lead to better outcome and ensure that we pay close attention to those. So I've been asked to speak about the state of play, and I'm just going to give a couple high-level comments. One is the shift system that is now in schools. We both agree that we need to eliminate the shift system as soon as possible, because we need to increase contact time between the student and the teacher. As it stands now, over $300 million is needed to build new schools, to build new plants for us to house the students such that we can eliminate shift systems across the country. There is also another system that is in place, and I understand why we did it, where there are tiered exams. You have the CSEC exams, and then you have another exams for all men are equal, but all students are equal, but I guess some are not as equal as others. And then you have the CCSLC. Now what that does, it builds in a kind of moral hazard in the school system, because then there's no incentive for the teacher to ensure that most students do the higher rated CSEC exams. At the end of the day, if 10% do CSEC, or 11% of what they call the designated cohort, and then all the others could then simply do CCSLC, the end result being that you have a very small percentage of your available cohort being qualified at the higher level CSEC exams, and all the other students are basically shoved into no exams whatsoever, or the CCSLC. That system needs to change. And in the whole establishment of the Education Inspectorate and the National Teachers Council, that must be addressed, where there are incentives for ensuring that schools are designated based on their ability to improve student performance at whatever level that student comes in. It's not to say that all students should graduate with 80%, but if the student comes in at 40%, then the school should show its performance by moving that performance of the student from 40% to 60, or whatever that number is. And school should be designated based on a demonstrated ability to improve the performance of students. It brings me to the next point of quantity versus quality. And that which I just described in terms of the tiered exam system, it speaks to a problem that we've been having in Jamaica in our education system, where the focus has been on creating opportunity and access for more students, and we have failed to focus on access. And when I look across the landscape in our country, a major problem we have is focusing on outcomes. And again, the education sector is one of the more advanced in our country in terms of now moving to focus on outcomes. And that must be commended, but we cannot afford to drop the ball. So that takes me to the issue of funding. The Education Transformation Program, when it was published 4 years ago, it spoke to $20 million or thereabout per year that would be required for about 10 years for the implementation of the transformation program. We found 5 billion Jamaican dollars at the outset, and that money was quickly exhausted, and since then we have not found sufficient funding to implement the education transformation program. So my worry and the state of play in accountability in education is that we as leaders, we are also responsible, and we must be accountable to the people of Jamaica. And therefore we need to, in a bipartisan manner, find a way in collaboration with the private sector and other stakeholders as to how we're going to properly fund education in Jamaica. And so I want to applaud the minister with the idea and the concept of the National Education Trust. But it is a mere idea at the moment. We need to implement that, and all hands must be on deck as to how we're going to endow that trust and how we're going to, in a transparent and accountable manner, fund the transformation program of education. I believe that schools should be graded and put in categories along two dimensions. One, the ability to improve student achievement, and two, rating schools in one of 5 categories from undeveloped to well-developed, to evaluate the school's ability to use and manage data to improve student outcomes. And in that regard, we need to get the right people to become teachers. So it's one thing to evaluate teacher performance, and it's one thing to have professional development programs in education, but the quality of the education system will not exceed the quality of the teachers. And so we need to focus on a system where we can recruit the best teachers into the education system. In Singapore, for example, in South Korea, they recruit the top 5% of any available cohort into the teaching profession. In Finland, it's the top 10%. In Singapore, it's the top 30%. In Jamaica, we have not yet measured it, so that shows how far behind we are. The fact of the matter is, you can't expect to put in corn and reap peas. Regardless of what improvement you're going to put in place, we need to recruit the best minds. And so I applaud again the administration for properly paying the teachers. That will ensure that, or that will open the possibility of you recruiting better teachers into the profession. But we also need to put systems in place, a strategic and systematic recruitment system in place, so we can get the best teachers into the profession. There are a couple more points I wish to make, but I know that I'm running out of time, so I'll take questions.